Welcome back, friends, to another Dissidia Final Fantasy Opera Omnia video. Lids87 here, and in today's video, we're going to be talking about Seifer Kurasame to see how worthy they are of your tickets and or gems. Before I do get into it though, friends, please remember to hit that like and subscribe button as it does help out the channel. And hopefully I can do this rather quickly because we are going to be talking about two characters, so I don't want to take up too much of your time. There will be timestamps down below in the time frame. So the very first character we are going to be talking about is going to be Seifer. Seifer in Opera Omnia is a ranged attacking debuffer that will be receiving a brand new LD weapon that is going to give him some utility. Now, Seifer in Opera Omnia, some things to keep in mind is that he does deal extra elemental weakness damage, brave damage, when he is attacking targets that are debuffed by 50%. His skill 1, No Mercy, does have an element tied to it, being wind, and all of his abilities are AoE, just helping you keep the enemy's brave in check. Now, some generic debuffs that he can inflict, there's a 60% chance to inflict these two debuffs, is with his first skill, No Mercy, 30% attack down for 6 turns, and with Bloodfest, his second ability, a 40% max brave down for 6 turns. Bloodfest is his call action, and he will inflict that 40% max brave down for 4 turns. He can also grant himself a generic buff with Bloodfest for 6 turns, a 30% max brave. His first framed buff that he grants himself with No Mercy and Bloodfest is Sorceress's Knight for 6 turns. This is going to increase Seifer's attack and max rate by 50%. Debuff success rate will be increased by 70%, just easier to land these debuffs. And while his EX ability buff is up, while Sorceress's Knight is active, he will gain access to Brave Attack++, HP Attack++. With Demon Slice, it's going to be doing 2 things. The first one is it's going to be inflicting Scars of Destruction on his enemies for 1 turn. This is going to decrease the enemy's their speed by 10%. And this is also going to decrease any brave damage they deal to 0, saving you from moments when massive damage is heading your way. Just keep in mind, if they do cleanse themselves or that Lufenia orb trickles down to 0, you're pretty much screwed. And the other thing his EX ability is going to be doing is that it's going to grant him that Young Revolutionary buff for 6 turn. It's going to increase Seifer's attack by 30%, increases brave damage by 10% per debuff on the targets. Now, when I was doing my research, I didn't see any limits, so that means up to 80% brave damage against his enemies. He's going to be hitting hard. Just be sure to bring other call actions so you can get the enemies to full 8 debuffs. And any buffs that he does grant to himself, the turn durations will be increased by 2. With his LD ability, Purge, he has 4 uses of this. What this is going to do, 4 hit AoE range plus AoE HP attack executed twice. This will delay the targets by 1 turn. This will inflict a new debuff on his enemies called Foul, and he will grant himself a new buff called Purge. Now that Foul debuff, it is a 4-turn debuff that is going to decrease the enemy's defense by 40%, sap by 10% of max brave, and any brave recovered will be reduced by 30%. So not only can this guy literally stop the enemies from dealing any form of brave damage, he reduces their brave recovery by 30%, helping you keep their brave in check. That Purge buff, it is a frame buff for 7 turns. This is going to increase his stolen max brave overflow by 20%, increases HP damage deals by 20% whenever he's attacking a debuff target, and whenever he is attacking an enemy afflicted with Foul, this will delay that target by 1 turn, except during a chase, and only once per turn. And due to his abilities being AoE, he can delay all the enemies by 1 turn whenever he attacks. So very nice utility for Seifer. When it comes to his LD boards, when the quest starts, he will grant himself Purge for 4 turns. When the battle begins, when the wave begins, he will inflict Foul on all his enemies for 4 turns. And changes to the LD ability Purge, the brave hits are going to be increased by 2, and it's going to be hitting harder, so higher brave potency and higher stolen max brave overflow. When it comes to his LD ability Call Action, he will inflict Foul for 4 turns, so you're going to be seeing that 40% defense down. Not bad, especially if you don't have units that call actions that inflict defense down like Ferris. You're going to be seeing that sap and brave recovery reduction by 30%. If only they had EX ability calls, he would have been much more valuable in my eyes. Now, when it comes to his worthiness, I'm going to be repeating this in some of my videos as it's possible, viewers can miss this from previous videos, is that I'm going to be a little bit more harsher on some of these units as we progress forward towards the Lufenia Plus era. Lufenia Plus is about 2.5 months away. I am going to say this right now, all of these units that we're going to be receiving, they're wonderful. They're great. They're going to be beautiful on your team compositions. They're going to be doing some damage. That being said, I do have to be harsher on these units because due to us having a vast roster of characters, it's possible that we already have some of these units that do what they do already, or we want to save for some stronger, some very useful characters that could be used in the Livonia Plus era. Or especially, I'll be harsher if there are other alternatives to said unit. But at the end of the day, friends, it is your stash. Enjoy the game however you want, especially if they're your favorite characters. That being said, when it comes to the worthiness of Seifer, I'm going to put him just somewhat worthy of your resources, especially if you have other delayers in the game. Now, you guys saw already that I'm saying all these units are wonderful. Seifer's great. Seifer's great in his own way, having the capabilities to stop the enemies from stealing Brave, reduce their Brave recovery effects by 30%, increasing his own Brave damage up to 80%, based on how many debuffs are on the enemies, while he's already increasing his Brave damage by 50% when he's attacking a debuffed target. He's going to be hitting hard. The capabilities to delay all the enemies due to his foul debuff from his LD ability and granting himself Purge. He is a strong character. But if you have some of these other units like Garland, Arnea, or the upcoming Cloud of Darkness who already have delays built into their kits, two of those units that I named have a burst or will be receiving a burst. Cloud of Darkness or Arnea with her debuff allows your party members to crit and increase their critical Brave damage. Arnea is a little bit more party-wide when it comes to her debuff, while Seifer is more towards himself. But again, Seifer hits like a damn truck. But because we have some of those units, I don't necessarily think you need Seifer if you have some of those units. Now, I am going to circle back to him when I start talking about Kurasame, this banner overall, but that's where I'm going to leave him at the end of the day. Oh, Lids is being harsh on these units, but I will say that he does not repeat, or he has not repeated yet on the JP side of the game, so that means possible love leader down the line alongside a Crystal level 90, but you're going to have to wait quite a while before that happens. The next character we're going to be talking about is going to be Kurasame. I would say the main prize on this banner. Kurasame is an ice melee support type attacker with a juicy debuff built into his kit, and he's going to be receiving LD boards. Now, the way Kurasame works is that his kit revolves around his Hyodo debuff. It is a stackable debuff up to 5, and his entire, or the entire party benefits from that Hyodo debuff. Before we talk about it though, let me just quickly talk about his frame buff that he grants himself with his skill 1, Ice Blade Resin. Quite instructive for 8 turns. This is going to increase the party's attack and max rate by 35%. He will enchant himself with ice by 30%, just more ice damage, and he will gain access to Brave Attack ++ HP Attack ++. Let's start talking about that Hyodo debuff. First and foremost, let's talk about how you can inflict it. Now, in order to inflict it or increase the stacks, you have to use the skill 2, Multi Blazaga. This will increase or inflict 2 stacks of Hyodo. His EX ability, Ice Reaper, will inflict or increase the stacks by 2. His LD ability, Absolute Zero, will inflict or increase the stacks to 5, so right off the bat, max. And his EX ability being at, his EX passive being at EX plus 2 out of 3. When the wave starts, he will inflict 2 stacks of Hyodo on all the enemies, and this does come into play with his call action, which we're going to be talking about later in this video. If the enemy already has Hyodo on them, you can increase the stacks by the afflicted enemy taking a turn, attacking the enemy with Kurasame's HP Attack ++, using Kurasame's skill 1, Ice Blade Resin. Something to keep in mind also that Hyodo is once the enemy takes a turn, and if they are at 5 stacks, the stacks will reset back down to 1. So keep that in mind, especially if you're going to go during a heavy damage phase, or if you're going to go into burst mode. We'll talk about why here in a second. Now that Hyodo debuff, 6 turns, this is going to decrease the enemy speed by 20%. Ice resist down, so Kurasame is going to be hitting harder because he does have ice built into his kit, and he enchants himself with ice, and this will increase HP damage up based on how many stacks are on the enemy. So 1 stack, 10% HP damage up, 2 stacks, 15%, 3 stacks, 20%, 4 stacks, 25%, 5 stacks, 30% HP damage up. So remember how I just talked about going into a heavy damage phase or during a burst mode? This is why you want to try to keep the enemy at 5 stacks so you could dish out more damage, more HP damage during that burst mode, just allowing you to chunk out that boss that much faster. Now his Ice Pillar is a buff that he grants himself with his EX ability Ice Reaper. It does come into play with Hyodo, Now, first and foremost, this is going to increase Kurasame's attack and max rate by 20%. And whenever Kurasame is attacking an enemy afflicted with Hyodo, there is going to be follow-up damage in the form of Ice Pillar follow-up. So that just means more damage that Kurasame can dish out on his enemies as long as they're afflicted with Hyodo, and he does have Ice Pillar on himself. Another buff that he does grant himself with his LD ability, Absolute Zero, for 12 turns is just going to currently, and it increases the party's attack and stolen max brief overflow by 20%. Now with his LD boards, he's going to be seeing some beautiful changes. First and foremost, this is going to increase Absolute Zero's brave hits to 10. It's going to be hitting harder with higher overflows. Free abilities on the following turn, and there's going to be some changes to his LD ability buff, Warm Gaze. Now what this is also going to do on top of increasing your party's attack and stolen max brief overflow, this is going to increase Kurasame's own weakness brave damage by 30%, so hitting even harder. This is going to enchant your party with ice, and your party members, their weakness brave damage is going to be 30%. And this does stack on top of already Kurasame's weakness damage up, so Kurasame is going to get a total of 60% weakness damage up, allowing him to hit harder. Now let's talk about his call actions, because very, very powerful call actions to have available to you. Now, first and foremost, both of these call actions, remember that we were talking about his EX plus 2 out of 3, how he was going to come into play with his call actions. This is why. You call in Kurasame pops in. They're going to be afflicted with 2 stacks of Hyodos, and then it's going to change depending on which one of these you use. Now, when you use Ice Blade Resin, Kurasame pops in, that's 2 stacks of Hyodo. He attacks him, this will increase the stack an additional time, so that's 3 stacks of Hyodo, and then the caller will get Ice Blade Resin, call for 3 turns. This is going to increase the party's max brave and attack by 20%, and the caller will be enchanted with ice. With his LD ability call, Absolute Zero, also for 3 turns, the party will benefit from a 20% attack and stolen max brave overflow. The entire party will be granted Ice Enchant, and the party will benefit from that 30% weakness damage up on top of the Hyodo debuff. Now, I was playing around with this on the JP side of the game before I actually did this video, because I wanted to understand the interaction that much more. And I found some interesting things. Is that when you use Absolute Zero right off the bat, the 2 stacks of Hyodo will be inflicted, but this will not increase the stacks automatically up to 5. I found that rather interesting. But if you use Ice Blade Resin first, let a few turns go, and then use his Absolute Zero, it does increase the stacks to 5. And another thing to keep in mind is that if you use Ice Blade Resin, for example, let's say you use Ice Blade Resin first, enemy will be inflicted for Hyodo. I believe it was for 6 turns. A few turns go by. Let's say the enemy has 2 turns left of Hyodo. If you use his LD ability, this will refresh the turn duration, just letting you have that Hyodo debuff on the enemy that much more longer. And like I just mentioned, due to me playing around with this on the JP side of the game, you use Absolute Zero, you'll be at 5 stacks. So you could play around with this and plan around this right before you go into a burst mode to dish up more damage on your enemies. All right, friends, that's just some ways to use Hyodo or his call actions. If you guys have other tips, be sure to let me know down below in the comments. Now, when it comes to the worthiness of Kurasame, now first and foremost, there is gonna be a free multi-draw on this banner, so it's possible you could pick up either or of their LDs or gear for free. But when it comes to the worthiness of Kurasame, he is actually worthy of your resources. Now, he did debut before with his LD weapon, so I would say if you already have him, you don't necessarily need to chase on this banner. You are done. If you are a newer player, or if you're lacking both of these units, well, if you're a newer player, obviously you're lacking both of these units. What are you talking about, Lid? So if you're lacking both of these units, it might be a good idea to throw resources on this banner. Now, first and foremost, Kurasame, very powerful call action. All right, so even if you stop using him at some point, his call action is a staple in a lot of team compositions. Go look at JP videos. You're more than likely, maybe 90%, 90 to 95% of those videos are going to have Kurasame as a call action, because it increases your party's elemental weakness damage up. Very useful during the Lufenia Plus era, on top of that HP damage up towards your enemies. So that in itself, I mean, having Kurasame on your team compositions, very strong. Lufenia Plus era, very useful call action to have at your availability. If you're a newer player, if you don't have either of these units, it's not a bad banner to throw tickets on because of Kurasame and because of Seifer. Because if you're newer, you may, depending on who you got during the Start Dash banner, Seifer, he's a very powerful attacker to have on your team composition. Lots of AoE damage, capabilities of debuffing, increasing his own damage, and delaying the enemies might not be a bad unit to have on your roster on top of the possibilities to get Kurasame. Alright friends, now Kurasame does not repeat later down the line, or he has yet to repeat on the JP side of the game, so when he does come back, he's going to be receiving some love, I hope, and he will be a Crystal level 90 character. So both of these characters, you're going to have to wait quite a while before they come back, unless they decide to switch things up on the global side of the game. All right, friends, so at the end of the day, if you already have Kurasame, you're done on this banner. If you are a newer player, or if you don't have either of their kit, you're an OG and you just missed them out from back in the day, this banner is not a bad banner to throw resources on because of Kurasame. And again, Seifer, he's a good character, especially if you pick up his gear. But I wouldn't go to him, as we do have other call actions that can do what they do. Of course, Kurasame is a staple, but we have other call actions that are very useful, for example, like Ignis or Cryo or Ash or even Gaub, that have the capabilities to enchant your party members while also lowering the enemy's resistance to said element. But of course, again, Kurasame with that Hyoto debuff, with that HP damage up, with the extra elemental weakness damage up, it's just top tier in my opinion. All right, friends, so that is it for this video, friends. I want to thank you guys for watching my coverage of Kurasame's Lost Chapter, the two characters, Seifer and Kurasame himself. Be sure to let me know down below in the comments your overall thoughts about this banners. Are you guys going to chase on this banners? Do you already have Kurasame from before? Are you a Final Fantasy VIII fan? Do you love Seifer? Do you think I was too harsh on Seifer? Let me know down below in the comments. Me personally, I'm not going to be going in on this banner. I already have Kurasame from before, but I will say this though. I do like what Seifer does. So if I get his LD weapon for free, I'm going to build him up. I don't have him on the JP side of the game. I think he's really cool. But again, I don't want to potentially get Kurasame duplicates if I decide to throw tickets on this banner. So the free multi-draw is going to be good enough for me, as I do have Aranea, I do have Garland, and I will be chasing after Cloud of Darkness in the near future. All right, friends, so all your wonderful comments down below. And until next time, friends, good luck and have a good one.